Enforced randomization, increasing the value of automation. Anand, Ramdeo.
Good afternoon, everyone. There is a saying that if you give a man a fish, he will eat it for a day. But if you teach him how to catch the fish, he will probably sit in a boat and drink beer whole day. Now, the question is, why can't we do something like this for the automation? Why can't we introduce randomization in our automation and let it loose in the sea and find defects rather than waiting for a defect to appear with a single set of data on a single set of path? So let's see if it is possible or not, maybe. So when we think about automation, what usually comes to our mind? Repetition. Most of the time. Most of the time, in most of the projects I have involved in, automation is more or less synonym with the repetition. Pretty much same kind of data over and over again. Data might be unique, but it will not be random. So at the most, if there is a need, someone will just add a timestamp to make it unique, but it will still not be random. And as far as the navigational path, as far as the process and the operations are concerned, there is hardly any variation. So it's repetition every single time. And because of that, we get this false comparison with the manual testing, that manual testing is better because it's not repetitive. Well, I would also like to challenge that assumption because, in my opinion, manual testing is also repetitive. Because when you're testing a specific feature and whatever is needed to reach to that specific feature, how many times do we consciously try all the possible variation? So if you were trying registration or the login to access a specific feature, how many times would you consciously use a data which you have not already covered in your registration process? Or how many times would you give a password, which is a valid password rule, and use it? We just don't do it. We get into the habit of using same data over and over again because it's difficult otherwise. I mean, how many passwords can you remember? Most of the services that we use in our normal life, we probably get around by using 3 or 4 different passwords, not more than that, because there is just not much that we can think of. If I ask you to come up with the various names, you'll probably run out of names after coming up with like 30 or 50 odd names. And now thinking about the data, thinking about the input data and the business rules associated with that data, it might be extremely difficult to come up with and cover all those data combinations. So in my opinion, manual testing is also affected by repetition bug. We just don't notice it. We just think that we are not doing repetition in manual testing, but we might be doing repetition. We are just not cautious about it. So let's have a look at this sample application, which probably is familiar to everyone. These are some screenshots from the Twitter. We have a simple registration form, a login form, and then bunch of features. So when we start testing registration, how many times do we come to this registration page in all the possible navigational path? I mean, that path could be from header, could be from footer, could be from a promotional page, could be from an external application altogether, could be from email. The point is, you need to test registration. Where do you reach? How do you reach to the registration page? Sometimes becomes irrelevant. But does it matter? Maybe it does, maybe it does not. But the question is, how do we know? I see testing as a sampling exercise. And with randomization, we increase our sampling size. We increase our probability to uncover interesting things, which we'll probably miss if we don't do randomization. Now, as far as the randomization is concerned, what are the different pieces where we can introduce? So first, as I spoke, is the navigation. How do you reach at the page or at the screen that you need to test? So let's say there are like 5 different combinations, 5 different paths which will lead you to this registration page. Once you have reached the registration page, what's the next step? You got a form and you need to fill this form. So you need data. And every field will have a specific business rule associated with it. So what's a valid name? What are the valid strings for a first name? What are the valid emails? What are the valid password? Every field in pretty much all the forms have different rules associated with it. If you're testing manually, it will become extremely difficult to select a specific data set or a specific data from that rule and do it every time consciously. It will be difficult. There will be a limited set that you can try. But if you are doing automation and if you can write some kind of random data generator, which will give you a random string based on the rule that you specify for that particular string, computers will do it relentlessly for you. Another problem with manual testing is that even if you are conscious, even if you are trying different combination, but how do you know if something fails, why it failed? Because you have finite amount of memory and finite amount of things that you can remember. But computer on the other hand, if you have good enough logging, then it can pretty much record and remember every single thing that you are doing. So your manual testing is as repetitive as you want it to be. And your automation, it's probably easier to implement randomization and increase the sample size. So okay, we have covered navigation, we have covered the data. The next thing is the sequence. Normally, in manual or automation, we start filling from top to bottom. And that's the standard. But what about the user? Do you think that user will always fill form from top to bottom? Maybe yes, maybe not. How do we know? Is it not worth testing different sequences? Would it lead any defect? Would it give us any defect? How do we know? It's our job to try. It's our job to identify opportunities to uncover interesting information. Maybe the user's screen is already scrolled in the middle and they start filling in whatever field is in front of them. And with all the intelligent JavaScript validations that we usually have in the forms, it might be worth trying different combinations. And after you have filled the form, the next thing is the actual operation that you need to perform on the form in the form of saving this data or sending this data to the server. Normally, we use mouse and click on the button, but is it the only way? Can we not use keyboard to navigate to the page and hit the space bar? Can we not navigate with the keyboard and hit the enter? Can we not have a focus on the form and then hit the enter? Or can we not send this data directly using HTTP post? There are so many different ways to send this data. And now if you think about all this combination, you have combinations around navigation, then you have combinations around data, you have combinations around sequence, and you have combinations around operations. I mean, these combinations are mind-blowing. I mean, you cannot cover all of them with manual testing consciously every single time. And automation will make it extremely easy. Since I've got only 5 minutes, so I'll rush. Let's have a quick look at the automation code that for the Twitter functionality that we just discussed. So at the higher level, it might look like you register a new user, and then that user logs in and send a random tweet. So that's the functionality that we want to test. Now the reason why randomization work in these things is because we have good level of abstraction at every level. Where in the higher level test, you don't need to worry about randomization, but the bits which is covered at a specific level, you can have randomization at that level. So for example, in this case, I need to be here. Every time we say register a new user, the application can choose a random path and reach at the navigation page. And the second part is when you're generating the data to fill form, application or the automation can generate random data based on the rules which are specific for the fields. When you are filling the form, it's extremely simple to give a numeric number to every field, shuffle that in an array, and then fill that form in that order. So it's all about tinkering the system and finding out what are the opportunity to uncover interesting information. So your automation does not have to be repetitive. Folks familiar with the model-based testing can think that it's a model-based testing approach. Well, it might or it might not. To me, it does not matter. For me, it's solving my problem. For me, it's adding more value. As far as I'm concerned, it's consequential that, it's treated or it's going into the model-based testing direction. to me, it does not matter. I mean, from my point of view, what I'm doing is that I'm introducing bits and pieces of randomization wherever it makes sense. And it's as far as challenges are concerned. So the biggest challenge is keeping track of what's happening, in the sense that what navigational path you are taking, what data you are using, in what sequence you are filling the form, what operation you are filling, what operation you are using to send the data to the server. I mean, because of all the different combinations, you have to keep track of what's happening. So logging becomes extremely important. If you're not logging each and every action, and if you're not making it easier to go back and see what was happening in the automation, then it might be difficult to see why this test was failing in the first place. So that's first challenge. The second challenge is on the lines of how you have structured the automation. If there are not right level of abstraction in place, if the testing code is scattered all over the places, then it might become difficult. So the reason why this was possible, because at the higher level or a level below that, I was just focusing on the intention that what is needed to perform at that particular stage. So higher level, I want to register a new user. Lower level, I need to go to the registration page. And at that level, I can have different implementation of what's happening. Now, if you think about it, let's say Twitter exposes a functionality to get registration using text messages. My high-level test will probably still look the same. Register a new user, send a tweet. And then in the registration method, there will be a little switch which will decide whether use this method or use the text message. So having right level of abstraction is essential if you want to implement any kind of randomization. What else? So these are the two challenges. So I want to leave with the question. In my opinion, it's extremely valuable. But what I fail to understand is why it is still not mainstream. Is it our bias? It is our bias that every test should fail in a predictable way? Or it is our bias that every test, or it is biased towards the complexity of the randomness, that randomness is very difficult? I don't understand that. To me, it looks like a valuable thing to do, and I would love to see this become a mainstream thing, and we see more and more examples of randomization in automation. Thank you.
Thank you, Anand. So now is the phase where you have to stretch your arms and hold up your cards. So please.
So it occurs to me that possibly one reason this may not have taken off is it seems like a lot of the automation randomness that would be simple to add in, like the example you gave, which I understand was simplified for the purpose of explaining it in 20 minutes or less, is the kind that's going to find low-value bugs. So if you enter things in the wrong order, you'll get an ugly page or something like that. But that's not going to bring your business down necessarily. Whereas implementing something like that, model-based testing, is very complex and very brittle. So I finding that middle ground, and I don't know that there's a lot of value to be captured in the middle ground, and maybe that's why it's not taking off. That's just a suggestion. Maybe somebody else wants to comment on that.
Okay, can I comment first? Okay, so as far as low value bug is concerned, well, what I would say is that how do we know that this stuff will find low value bug? I mean, I can tell you the real life example. In the current project, the kind of defects that we have found is things like when you save the form, if you move your mouse, click on the submit, it works, but if you enter, it does not work. Now, it's a normal usability defect. Yes, you will not bring down business because of this defect, but it's a valuable thing to have. And if usability is important for that particular application, it matters. So, and also, I mean, we just don't know what we will find because of this. It's just that we are increasing the sample size. Another interesting thing that we found was around the emails. I mean, you will be surprised. I mean, not everyone, whoever is not familiar with the RFC related to the email. So as part of this, we implemented a test data generator, which would give us a random email based on the RFC. Now, RFC is very relaxed, but the different implementation of the email clients, they are strict. So for example, as far as RFC is concerned, certain character set is valid. But Gmail does not allow few character sets. Yahoo does not allow few other character set. AOL probably does not allow few other character set. Which validation your application will use? How do you know? So if your application's registration process expect the same validation that you have on Gmail, then you are missing out on probably different mail clients, isn't it? So that was something that we found because of randomization, because we were just randomly generating the strings based on the RFC, and we got it fixed. Now, what's the value? We don't know.
All right, we only got 2 minutes. We would have on a substring 64, can appear in 28 over there. I decide to actually go for more greens. There is only 2 minutes left. So who has a burning question among you three?
You ask why hasn't it caught on more, potentially, and I come from places that have used randomized testing a fair amount, usually associated with huge data spaces where the only way to know what's going on is through some kind of truly randomized sampling approach, Monte Carlo type of thing. So there are isolated pockets where it catches on. What I would suggest, though, to answer your question, and for you to think about how to do, is I'm not sure most typical testers out there are aware of randomized testing. It also comes with some problems. You have to have the automation, which you tied into. The other problem that you have to address, and maybe you have, is some need for an oracle. When you're generating random sets, how do you know what correct system response is gonna be?
Okay, so the way we have solved the problem of Oracle is that our Oracle is never changing. We always know what we are expecting. If we implement model-based from the book, and if we start exploring in what state I am, and what are the things that will make sure that I am in the correct state, how I am transitioning, if I implement from model-based testing by having a model as an entry point, as a starting point, then I will have to answer these questions. But if my entry point or starting point is just a normal test that I want to register, then I know what I am expecting after registration. What we are randomizing is the process around registration. What are the different things that you need in order to register? So my Oracle is fixed, but check whatever needs to be checked after registration. How I get to the registration is randomized. So that way it's a bit simpler.
All right, thanks, Anand. We have 2 more, but we run out of time, so it's 173 and 36. You might want to take it offline and just ask the question directly to Anand. All right, Anand, thanks a lot for your presentation.
Thank you.
That was enforced randomization, increasing the value of automation. Anand, Ramdeo.